Good morning, everybody. In the United States, good afternoon, folks in Europe and in Asia. Welcome to today's webinar production. I'll just give it a minute because I think we had a record turnout for a RPA-focused webcast today. We have 3,600 people signed up, so I can just see everyone piling in as I speak. So welcome, my name is Phil First. I'm the CEO, Chief Analyst at HfS. I'll be your host for today. Most of you hopefully will be familiar with some of the work we do at HfS Research. I've been in the industry for 20 years now, much of that as an industry analyst with IDC, Gartner, and then obviously more recently HfS Research, which I founded in 2010, known for founding the term as a service economy, and more recently the digital OneOffice, and we'll be talking about that a bit today on the conference call. There we go. And then joining me today, I'll get these folks to introduce themselves in a little while, just after the intro, but we have Shada Cherwu, who's a senior partner at Ernst & Young in the Intelligent Automation area, Sumit Pathak, who's a senior vice president at Societe Generale. We also have Kashiv Marbub, who's a vice president at Automation Anywhere, John O'Brien and Tom Reiner, colleagues of mine at HfS Research. So welcome everybody. I look forward to today's conversation. And HfS, we were actually the first analyst firm who ever just took the onus to write about the lovely term robotic process automation. November the 1st, 2012 was the famous date that this took place, just over 5 years ago, with a famous blog entitled Greetings from Robotistan, Outsourcing's Cheapest New Destination. We thought it sounded like a good idea at the time, so we wrote a bit more about it. We actually saw it emerging as a real threat to low-cost outsourcing. And before we knew it, this had got into The Economist, Business Week, Financial Times, absolutely everywhere. And then we all know what happened after that. So we enjoyed being the first to write about it, and today be so immersed in the coverage of the area, having such esteemed people dedicated like John and Tom, my colleagues as well. So welcome. At HfS, we have a vision around this OneOffice framework, which we'll talk to you about shortly. We're all about the major innovations impacting business operations. So we look at automation, AI, blockchain, the Internet of Things, and digital business models, all the big change agents that are impacting business operations. And we really work to influence the backbones of enterprises to be competitive and how they can partner with capable service providers, technology suppliers, and third-party advisors. And we really believe that this emerging industry is upon us. We call it the digital operations industry, where we have folks who've come from consulting backgrounds, folks who've come from enterprises, people from software organizations, services firms, etc., really convening around the change agents that are impacting the industry, like AI, like RPA, like blockchain, and even the folks on today's webinar are coming from all corners of the industry as well. And when you come to our summits at HfS, it's great to see this emerging sort of industry really start to take off. Just a quick word on our summits before we move on. We've got a huge industry kickoff in New York in March in Times Square. We're doing our first HfS Future of Operations Summits in Australia in April, in Sydney and Melbourne, Cambridge, UK in July, Bangalore we'll be at in September of this year, and then finishing up in Boston. So there's going to be 6 dates for HfS Summits in 2018. We've also announced a really cool partnership with Gonvalin Keys of Cambridge University. That person you may have heard of is Professor Stephen Hawking. We're doing a HfS Summit in Cambridge on July the 3rd this year, and hopefully many of you will get to come and spend some time with us there. But when we look at the industry today, it really is all about data. This is a study that we've just released with Accenture, you may have seen, around intelligent operations, and we spoke to 460 major decision makers and enterprises. And you can see here when we asked business leaders about the following business drivers having the biggest impact on their business, this shift towards a touchless, virtual, online environment, this shift away from physical face-to-face engagements is dominating operations leadership today. And then the second area that really came out is this ability to make more predictive decisions based on much more rapidly accessible real-time data across the organizations, combating the threat of disruptive competitors, and being able to micro-target customers, really hyper-personalize what you're doing with your customers. And you really can't do this without a really solid automation backbone, which is why at HfS we put a lot of time and effort into what we call, the digital OneOffice. And this is where we look at how an organization designs its outcomes around the needs of the customer. So we look at how do they foster a genuine digital customer partner and employee engagement ecosystem. A genuine digital organization has this ability to take a lot of the social, mobile, and interactive tech we use in our personal lives and really create that experience for all the stakeholders in its environment. So employees, customers, and partners, to empower them to interact with each other seamlessly in real time. And this is about creating, supporting, and sustaining an immersive customer experience where all the touch points across an organization are tied to serving the customer as effortlessly and seamlessly as possible. And it's often not necessitating any actual human interaction. And these immersive customer experiences are about leveraging these omni-channels, typically mobile, social, interactive tech, and creating meaningful analytics from these converged data sets that make this real-time digital experience happen for an organization and its customers, its employees, and its partners. So this OneOffice organization needs a support function to service those customers, get its products and services to market when and where they want them, manage the financial metrics, understand their needs and future demands, and really make sure it has the talent which truly understands how to meet the desired outcomes of what they do. It's about embedding these design thinking techniques to achieve these outcomes. It's about building a scalable digital underbelly that automates, it digitizes, it cloudifies, it secures. It's about achieving this digital support function, or this kind of human middleware function, if you like, without hierarchies and silos. It's about being able to support functions like IT, finance, HR, and supply chain, aligned with supporting the customer experience as opposed to operating in a vacuum. And we really think about this as an intelligent digital support capability where broader roles are created and human performance is aligned with the achievement of common business outcomes. And then finally, this is about establishing intelligent cognitive processes that promote predictive decision-making. So the digital OneOffice is not just about collecting and archiving historical data simply to discover what went wrong. It's about being able to predict when things will go wrong and devising smart strategies to get ahead of them. So the digital OneOffice is about embedding smart cognitive applications into process change and workflows. It's about learning from mistakes and new experiences along the way. This is what we term as the organizational neural system. It's about cognitive technologies, advanced analytics, and automation that help create the capability necessary to operate in digital environments by automating and extracting the data needed real time to respond to markets, support critical decisions, and really stay ahead of the game. And you can see here how we've looked at many of these emerging automation-led technologies that we'll be talking about a lot today to help make this happen, like RPA and RDA, a lot of emergence of machine learning, which can really help stitch together workflows, build more intelligent AI capabilities for the business. And I'll leave you with one sort of final data point from our research today, where we spoke with 100 C-level executives, and we actually shared with them the OneOffice framework, and we asked them, what they saw as the primary benefits of breaking down these barriers between the front, the middle, and the back office. And they actually came out straight away and said, look, it's about better data to drive the business forward. That is the most important thing we need in our business today. If we can bring together our operations as one, if we can leverage the technologies we need as the glue to make this happen, getting that data is the way we need to move things forward. And then the second most important objective is about a stronger alignment of business operations to business outcomes. And you really can't do one without the other. And that's what the digital OneOffice is all about. And how big is this opportunity? Here's some data we've taken from the various sources, including the Bureau of Labor, where we think today there's about $3.5 trillion of spend just in the US alone on business operations. And of that, we think about 850 billion can be looked at in terms of being automatable, and about 2 billion of that is being automated today. When we look at this globally, we can do a cut by the market we see for both RPA and RDA software and services. So this is the overall robotic software and services market, and we think this market is going to hit about $1.5 billion this year. It's growing at a clip of about 47% from last year and continuing to grow to about the $2 billion mark by next year. And it's the emergence of firms like Automation Anywhere who are with us today who are really helping drive this market forward. And when we look at the broader intelligent automation market, it's about 7 billion today, moving to about 9 to 10 billion in the next couple of years. This is where we look not just at RPA and RDA, but operational spend around broader automation initiatives. So a lot of internal spending on training, development, consulting, that sort of thing, and then artificial intelligence as well. So the total addressable market is approaching 10 billion, and we think increasing to close to 15 billion in the next 3 or 4 years. So with that, I would like to move to today's panel, and I believe John O'Brien is going to lead off with some insight from our new research that looks at RPA customer experiences.
Great, thanks very much, Phil. Hello, everyone. So my name's John O'Brien. I'm a research director at HfS covering RPA customer experiences. And the first slide that you see there is just an overview of some of the research that we've just recently published, the Customer Experiences Big Picture View, which feel free to click on and download if you're a subscriber. But I'm going to talk about some of the findings from that report in the next few minutes. So I'm producing a series of RPA customer experience reports to provide real voice of the customer insights into what's good and bad customer experience, and which providers are being successful, which aren't, and why they aren't. Part of the research, we interviewed 75 to 100 RPA clients from 12 different vendors, looking at their experiences with RPA over the past few months. We're interested, the questions we asked, we're interested in the way that RPA is helping them deliver against their real business challenges, rather than looking at their feedback on features and functions. We're taking an inside-out view of what it takes to make this stuff really work. So we benchmarked the answers against 6 dimensions of customer experience, which you see on this slide, that we determined are critical to achieving success. So from the right, they are out-of-the-box functionality, frictionless integration and support, security, governance and control, flexibility and scalability, embedding intelligence, and ultimately achieving business outcomes. The next slide, please. Thank you. So pertinent to today's discussion about scaling RPA, we found that every single customer that we spoke to as part of the research is in scaling mode today with their RPA initiatives. You can see from the slide that the number of bots that some customers have today and where they're going in 12 months' time, we're looking at almost doubling. And in fact, some of the customers who we spoke to are going far more aggressively than that. And it shows that the RPA vendors still have a huge opportunity to scale within their current customer accounts. And I'd be very keen, as I go through this deck, to hear from a couple of our panelists as well, who, how they view the outcomes that I'm talking about, whether they concur with the way you're seeing it. So I'd be very keen for some feedback from the audience and from the attendees on the panel. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the slide shows the high-level findings of the research across these 6 dimensions that I mentioned on a 4-point scale, where 4 is considered excellent and 1 is considered poor. The customer experience for RPA for the industry as a whole is actually good. It rates good overall. And this is actually really encouraging from our standpoint. It shows that the market is maturing and it's beginning to overcome some of the early challenges that we have followed over the last 12 to 18 months as the market has been a very hyped space, and it's now beginning to mature and settle down. On a relative basis, customer experience scores are highest for security, governance and control, and least for embedded intelligence. It's encouraging because the research shows the customers feel their RPA providers are now raising their game in these areas, like security and governance and flexibility, the areas which have proved tricky over earlier years. Scalability on the whole is actually rated good. However, providers tend to score much lower on the flexibility of their licensing models and whether they're getting best value for money from their RPA investments. Overall, I would say there's much more work needs to be done among the RPA providers around embedding intelligence into their solutions and delivering out-of-the-box functionality. This means reducing the amount of coding and configuration that's required to get the RPA solutions ready for use, because this all has a direct impact on the cost of deployment and the return on investment. The biggest challenge moving forward is customers' lack of conviction around their RPA providers' embedded intelligence, which you can see is rated fair. So they have a lot of work to do over the next period to convince customers that they are actually going to be the right platform to build broader intelligent automation services to their enterprise. The next chart, please. Next slide. Thanks. So here's the good news. All of the customers that we spoke to and surveyed, they would pretty much all recommend their RPA provider, which is great. However, not everybody responded to the question, would you recommend? There were a few who said maybe. The others decided not to answer at all. But on the whole, it was a pretty resounding endorsement. There were, however, differences between desktop automation or RDA and back office automation, unattended automation such as RPA. So actually 76% of the RDA customers surveyed would recommend their RDA provider, whereas only 54% of RPA customers would recommend. Some of the thinking behind this is that RDA is actually often quicker to implement and it delivers faster time to value. RPA, on the other hand, tends to be more complex and can involve much broader change management issues and take longer to implement. Getting to scale inevitably means increasing levels of complexity and change, and the technology is actually just one part of the much bigger challenge for scaling. I think the big takeaway from the research that we found was that getting the people, processes, and technology to interact seamlessly is vital, and that has broader implications for business process management and change across the organization. And it means taking the learnings from the good and the bad experiences and embedding these into best practice. So I would now hand over and ask the other chaps on the panelists on the line to introduce yourselves, if you could. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. My name is Kashif Mehboob. I'm Vice President of Product Marketing here at Automation Anywhere, and I look after our robotic process automation digital workforce platform known as Enterprise. And I'll be bringing in the vendor perspective to today's discussion. So I guess we will continue on that. Before I move forward, I just wanted to, I was looking at the panel, and it seems like we have representation and perspective from the enterprise side, which would be Sumit from Societe Generale. We have Sharda from EY, who will bring in not only the partner's perspective, but also a client's perspective, considering EY has been using Automation Anywhere for such a long time in its own environment. in the Center of Excellence as well. Of course, we have HfS and we have Automation Anywhere. So we have 4 angles of our industry being discussed today, quite unique. So as we look into building the workforce of the future, I just wanted to look back a little bit. In this slide, the image that you see here, it represents, it's about almost exactly 20 years ago that it showed up in Harvard Business Review. And the most telling thing here is the quote from the CEO of a large chemical firm. Implementing SAP was identified as a competitive advantage. So as we look to deploy RPA and digital workforce systems across these large enterprises, it is important to keep in mind the considerable investment that has already been made by these enterprises over the last quarter of a century almost to build this infrastructure of today. So I just wanted us to look back and see what we as vendors, as practitioners of RPA and digital workforce development should be aware of and are aware of, because RPA has to work with what's already there. The tens and if not hundreds of millions of dollars that enterprises have spent over time to develop the infrastructure is not going away. So we have to work with that infrastructure. And what's the best way to do that? So next slide, please. So as we look into that, along with building the technology infrastructure, every large enterprise has also developed another organization within its bounds that builds and deploys and manages its workforce. Of course, I'm referring to the human resources department that enterprises large and small rely on to hire and bring on board new employees. We expect today our HR departments to get these employees to be trained and given the requisite resources to make them productive in their areas of expertise. And last but not the least, every HR department also devises ways and systems and uses tools like performance reviews to gauge the performance of each and every employee against some defined KPIs. So, and of course, with the help of managers and supervisors and administrators. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is this has a very close correlation to discussing RPA and digital workforce platforms. So next slide, please. So as enterprises invest to develop the workforce of the future, the digital workforce platforms must be able to perform the same tasks that the HR departments are performing on the knowledge worker side. So just like hiring and onboarding employees, bots have to be licensed, designed, developed, and deployed. These bots then have to be provided resources, in this case, compute capacity, as well as integration with existing infrastructure. Bots need access to that infrastructure through various systems. And again, last but not the least, an analytics engine that delivers not only operational analytics, but also actionable business insights, informing the administrators, the supervisors, which bots are your MVP bots, are your most valuable bots, are performing really well, and which bots require more resources or else they'll fail. So there's a very much a one-to-one correlation, or it needs to be, for a successful, productive, high-performing digital workforce platform to look like, feel like, behave like an HR department within a large enterprise. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what are the key components of a comprehensive digital workforce platform. Of course, it needs to have RPA, but RPA alone is not going to cut it, as we look forward to referring to the research that John just mentioned. Robotic process automation has to be combined with cognitive technologies, and it must rely on a very robust engine of operational and business analytics. And all three combined, at least from Automation Anywhere's point of view, what we have found out now reaching about 1,000 plus customers, deploying close to 1 million bots over these 1,000+ enterprise customers, what we are finding out that the native nature of your RPA plus your cognitive technologies plus your analytics engine is critical, is important. And yes, you can connect with third-party tools, but having a native cognitive platform within your RPA environment, within your analytics environment, is what gives you a real true enterprise class digital workforce platform. Next slide, please. Now, if we talk about key components, we have to talk about what are the key tenets, what are the key pillars that enable scalability, that enable an organization to go from a pilot program to an enterprise-wide RPA and digital workforce implementation. And I know for a fact that Sumit and Sharda both have a lot of experience and would love to hear their perspective on this. But coming from a technology practitioner's perspective, for any digital workforce platform to be truly enterprise ready, it must have the ability to scale rapidly. And that is, as we worked with for almost 14 years now with our customers, what we have found out is the ease of use is a critical factor in how fast, how rapidly you can scale RPA across your organization, or scale cognitive technologies and analytics across your organization. So it's not just about deploying 5 to 10 bots, but it's about deploying hundreds and thousands of bots across multiple organizations, and yet still be able to manage the entire digital workforce from a central location. Just like, again, back to the analogy with an HR department, the digital workforce platform, it has to become a central nervous system. It has to have a control room that provides you the capability to look from a central location over your entire enterprise-wide landscape of automation and automating processes and getting data back. To Phil's earlier points, data is critical, and that's where your analytics engine has to be able to scale across boundaries and be able to very, very secure. So 3 tenets here. Scalability, we talked about. Ease of use is critical to that. Automation Anywhere gets high marks for that, and we've seen that in practice. We've seen our organizations, our partners, our enterprise customers go very quickly from a partner program to hundreds and thousands of bots, mainly because, and repeatedly, whenever we run surveys, we find out that it's the ease of use that enables it. And it's not just ease of use from a practitioner perspective, not from a technical perspective. It has to be on a business perspective. That how a business user with a ton of knowledge about how to do programming and all of that, does your digital workforce platform come built in with tools that allow business users to get onboarded very quickly? Next slide, please. So very quickly, we will go over again, referring back to the infrastructure that has been built by all of these enterprise organizations over the last 20 to 30 years. It's very critical that every digital workforce platform worth its salt must have built-in connectors with your SAPs and Oracles of the world, with your Office applications and your CRM systems and your custom applications. And on top of that, it has to have the operational and business analytics. It has to have the version control and audit trail and all of that. So these are the technical details that have to be built in, that not only get you started down the automation path, but if we think about RPA as the ramp towards digital transformation, all of these tools need to be built and need to be ready for an organization to get started. Next slide, please. This is a dynamic workload management. Simply means here is that as you deploy RPA, as you deploy digital workforce, as you automate your business processes, various business units cannot continue to perform in silos. And this again is a function of a digital workforce platform that is flexible enough to deliver the business value by allowing businesses to connect their resources so that automation systems can scale up and scale down based on the needs and demands of the system. If you have Black Friday tomorrow, do you go out and purchase your resources at that time? No, your system has to be ready to scale up to meet the Black Friday demands right there and then. And once Black Friday is gone, how to scale down. These things have to be built in. And what you're looking at is an example, is one of the many examples of how a digital workforce platform for example, in a BPO environment, but any SLA, service level agreement driven environment, how it should be able to trigger one business unit talking to another business unit, should be able to trigger the operations, get the resources, and scale up accordingly. Next slide, please. So very simply, again, once you get to the enterprise scale, one thing that happens is suddenly you have hundreds, if not thousands of bots. And we know from a fact, we're working with our larger customers, we have bot development teams that have 300, 400 bot creators working at a time. So again, it's part of the scalability function that the platform that you're using must come built in with a framework that helps you avoid the chaos that comes with working in a large organization. So going from dev to test to prod environments, graduating your bot from development into testing and making sure it's well tested and approved by the right personnel in your organization before it goes into production. It's highly secure and all that. All of that typically requires a framework, and your scaling system, it depends on that framework to perform. Otherwise, chaos ensues. You end up releasing and going into production with bots that are not ready yet. So again, one of those factors that have to be considered when choosing a digital workforce platform. Next slide, please. This is another example of the granularity that is needed, not just at an audit level or not just for auditing, not just for version control, but across the board. At Automation Anywhere, for example, our philosophy about security and about audit capability is very simple. It has to have the segregation of duties. The philosophy of segregation of duties and least privilege access is built into the security system that underpins the entire digital workforce platform that we have today. And it brings a level of security and level of care that when an organization scales on top of this digital workforce platform, there has to be a peace of mind that yes, the system can handle the stress that is going to be applied to it from various sides. So as you go across geographic boundaries, is your control room able to see across those boundaries and able to apply the security policies that are native to an international geographic location?
Yeah. Hey Kashif, there's been a lot of questions coming in on scalability from the audience in the question and answer box, and one is about planning for scale in the future, and should people consider the average volumes and workload or look more at peak situations? How should you sort of manage that as you look at your eventualities?
Excellent question. Actually, both. You cannot avoid looking at the average situation and just concentrate on the peak, because average is your day-to-day operation. You have to have the system designed for that day-to-day operation. This is where it's very important to have a system that has the flexibility built into it, that tomorrow when you know that you're going to hit the peak, or even if you don't know you're going to hit the peak, the system must come built in with tools and extensibility hooks, if you will, that allows you to quickly scale up your resources. And it's not just as simple as working with Amazon Web Services or another cloud platform. If you do not have the right right tools built into your digital workforce platform, you're not allowed to do that even if you're working with the best of the cloud platforms out there. So I would say the answer is both. It has to be, and this is where again the assessment of the system. This is where you need a very good services team that goes in, looks at the requirements, not just today on an average day-to-day basis, but for the future and for the peak instances, and designs and deploys the system that is appropriate for that kind of requirement for a day-to-day as well as for future requirements of the organization.
Okay.
Great. So I think I have just one more slide to show. So this entire discussion is about and has to be about the digital transformation journey. For enterprises, a digital journey has to be transformative, but it needs to start with something that delivers rapid results. We have seen over and over and over again as a vendor, from a vendor perspective, that if a platform, a system does not deliver rapid results, and our own research shows that the projects are more likely to not scale. So from our perspective, from Automation Anywhere's perspective, there are tools built in for rapid results. So ease of use is just the beginning. Your analytics tools have to provide you the correct information and tie into, Phil, to your point earlier, the neural network of the whole organization, and pull in the information and deliver it so you can immediately see results, not just from an operational perspective, but also from a business perspective. The insights have to be actionable. Analytics have to be meaningful. So delivering meaningful, rapid results within a month of deploying a pilot program, our surveys show that this is the key factor in forecasting whether this organization will be scaling or not, regardless of anything else. So that's something that we really think about. We put a lot of resources into, and so should every digital workforce platform out there. And now with that, I'll hand over to Sharda. Sharda, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Kashif, and welcome everybody. This is a deep topic that we've been certainly very embedded in. A little bit about me. I've been on this. We at EY have been on this intelligent automation journey. I guess in deeper force over the last 3 years. And my perspective, as was pointed out, is I've not only led our own intelligent automation journey in tax over the last 3 years or so, but also over the past year plus have been spending a lot of time with clients and helping them with their intelligent automation journey, RPA specifically, a lot of RPA in there. And so that's sort of where I come from. So the been there, done that experience, and having sort of lived through scaling stuff up today, just in the US alone, in the Americas alone, we have in tax alone about 240 bots running. Might not seem like a large number, but they're doing work for over 1,000, what over 1,000 people did, and they're not very busy. They're there, and so part of it is, with scale, we're trying to figure out how do we keep them. They're only about 30% utilized. So you figure we have 240 bots doing 1,000 people's worth of work in the US, only 30% utilized. And, if you had that with human beings, we'd be up in arms. And so we're always thinking about how do we find more to do with what we have and be able to sort of fine tune what we have. So that's sort of my story. I'm sure I'll get into more. And Kashif, I don't know where you want to take this discussion next.
I think we can bring Sumit into the discussion. He's had quite a journey deploying and RPA systems across the enterprise. Sumit, over to you.
Thank you, Kashif. Hi all. Just a quick introduction. I head the automation COE out of Bangalore for Societe Generale group. I've been in the automation space for almost 3 years now. Automated around 350 processes, and set up 2 COEs, one in Australian bank and the other one here in the French bank. So yeah, both the companies or both the countries have got its different culture, so the journey has been quite different in terms of how do you scale it up. As we go through the conversation, one thing which I would like to definitely suggest that every organization, the solution will be very specific to each of those. There might be a, in general principle, you can certainly discuss how to scale it up, but deep down you have to dig it and be able to see whether that particular solution fits within your own environment or not. So yeah, I'm happy to discuss further from here, Kashif, and see how we're going to take it forward.
Absolutely. So I think you and I were discussing the maturity model the other day that you certainly deploy. Tom, can we go to the next slide? I think it will help us. Sumit, if you could walk us through it.
Yeah. Sure. So we were talking about that. How do you basically, define a life cycle, a maturity life cycle of automation, and the stages is basically divided into 3 parts: initialize, industrialize, and institutionalize. Initialize is just when you have about to start or just started, talking about the automation, started talking about, identified a couple of vendors, you're doing proof of concept with them, and don't know what's going to happen. So it's very, very light touch points with respect to the processes. That's where the initialization comes through. And the industrialization is when you have got more framework in place. So we can move to the next slide and I can basically take through that. So so that basically are the 6 big elements which basically helps us to move from initial, industrial, and to institutionalized steps. So as you move through the journey, your operating model becomes far more stronger. From try fast, you become you become a bit more centralized in the way you deliver. Yeah, from early adopters, you have more of a program sponsors which come into the engagement model, and you move from talent management, where you start basically cross-skilling your developers on identifying more complex processes, and delivery management, innovation, and so on and so forth. So this is just an indicator in terms of which are the 6 areas which you should basically look at when you're basically trying to scale up. But a couple of things which I would like to certainly highlight in the scale-up journey is a few points, which is in the journey when you're in your initial phase, don't oversell what you're doing. It's very important, because what you realize that when you are trying to oversell, the complexity of each organization will basically lead to less number of returns, and which will impact the other more processes coming your way, and you may not have a happy sponsor. So I would definitely advise that don't oversell what you're basically trying to do. I think proof is in the pudding. Start automating, simple processes. Start automating not complex processes. Don't automate exceptions. Don't automate critical processes. Try to do as simple, high volume, get as much spot fires as you can within the organization, and see and show the bot, because when you see, it's when you see it, you believe it. So that's how I would go.
Absolutely. Sharda, you and I were discussing, and this is a good segue into optimization of automation at enterprise scale, specifically to avoid maintenance costs. You want to touch on that a little bit, because I think you have a very unique view, both from from so many different angles.
Yeah, sure. Yes. So I mean, one of the things that as I spend time with clients, and as we've looked at it on our own, there's 3 questions that people want. I mean, there's 3 questions that people ask. Those are the 3 desires. Make it easy for me, right? And I think the whole customer experience and the HfS research is so sort of right on point on that. Make it easy for me. Make it easy for my business people to use. The second point that you bring up, Kashif, is this maintenance point. Make it low maintenance. Don't make something that is so hard to maintain that if my process gets tweaked or changed, that I have to go back and constantly do it, or even make it easy for me to sort of trigger the bots, make it easy for me to make things happen when things are just in time. So that's the other piece. And the third piece that I think everyone is aspiring to do, especially when we work with them, is teach me, help me understand, let me, this whole point about rapid results, but help me scale up my own workforce. I really believe that, I was talking about one of my clients, and he said, well, 2018 is a year of the bot. And I think it really is, because people have sort of seen enough, done enough, and are sort of at that inflection point to sort of start scaling up and really being very thoughtful about it. But this whole rapid results and in creating a self-service model, I think RPA in 5 years, hopefully be like an Excel, right? You don't need people in IT to come and put their formulas in, and if you want to add a column or do whatever, put some macros in. So that's the kind of sort of ease and business sort of ownership and use that people are looking for. Going back to the maintenance point, though, one of the things we are thinking very hard as we go through, and we've in the sort of 240 bots or so, we have 200 plus processes that we've automated, and some of them are actually quite complex. I mean, I can explain one of them, but it's fairly complex stuff, so it's not easy stuff, and some of them were easy. The early ones to the point that Sumit made were the easier ones. We've gotten on to sort of some of the harder stuff. But the thing that we are trying to do is using existing things to be able to sort of pair up with RPA. You don't want to dismantle what's already there. You want to look at what's there and try and improve it. So, one of the big things we do to make things simpler and in sort of ease of maintenance is the use of rule books, right? And thanks for bringing up the slide, but the use of rule books combined with, and rule books that are not built into the bot and hard-coded into the bot, but are outside the bot that the bot refers to, that can be changed with the proper change control by the businesses. So that if a line changes, if you want to add another state to do something with, that rule book is outside of the actual RPA configuration, but the bot's been configured to basically follow the rule book that's outside. And that again allows for this whole point that was made about flexibility. It's so critical to have a flexible framework so that the IT teams are really busy doing a lot of stuff. One of the things we keep hearing is, we have a long list of things we need done, but our IT teams are really, it's sort of on it's not on the priority list because there's so many other competing priorities. So trying to figure out how you can kind of make it easy for the business to make the change. So if there's another attachment that's required to something that needs to get out, that thing should be able to be done through this rule book as opposed to hard coding stuff in the bot. So that's sort of a lot of what we've been designing. So the solution design of how you design it to be flexible allows for that scale. Because otherwise you could get stuck pretty easily and have to go in, have to tweak the bot all the time, which is sort of not what you need, what people are looking for.
Right. This is such an important point. It's not just all about technology. What we, from a vendor perspective, have learned, and what you're calling rule books, we actually have verticalized playbooks as part of our deployment team's entire process. So we were putting together, and not putting together today, but bringing under one umbrella our entire customer success team, which includes the services and everything. It's going to be industry's largest, to be announced very soon. One of the key things that we have realized is this idea of rule book, what we call the playbooks. And it has to be vertical specific. It can be business process specific as well. And we've seen that as we have developed these over working with 1,000 plus enterprise clients, when we go in now into a new client environment with a rule book ready for that client to deploy, things move so much smoother, so much faster, and taking away the burden from IT, to your point, John, that is so critical. Phil, any points you would like to bring in?
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of points around the journey. So there's one thing getting RPA scalable, sustainable, robust, etc. But there's been some questions around, moving, along the AI value chain and looking at machine learning and other areas like that. And actually, I think Tom Reuner is on the line, who's done a lot of work recently looking at AI and this, how clients can actually dovetail sort of more of a broader AI strategy with RPA. So maybe Tom could comment a little bit on where he sees a lot of this heading.
No, thanks, Phil. And actually, it's quite a tough question because, not least, as nothing is defined in the space, and buyers are pretty much just confused what AI really is or what it means to the organization. I think before I jump into somewhat specific, we have to be very clear that AI, then I think about Watson saving world hunger, a completely different complexion than what we typically would discuss in the context, back office, RPA, or even RDA. So I think we have to be really clear about the context, but also the difference. Having said all that, I mean, looking at the realities of RPA, and John has provided a plethora of pointers for those, the discussion around AI are much more mundane and down to earth as opposed to, again, saving world hunger and Watson. And in that context, AI is largely about dealing with variability of data and information inputs. It is about being able to deal with change in a document. It's about capturing things like handwriting and forms. It's about integrating semi and unstructured data. And of all those issues, let me zoom in on two, if I can. First, where are we really with OCR and data capture? We have to stop pretending we really have cracked it as a market. Suffice it to say, most tool providers partner with the likes of Abby to help with those issues, but we're still miles away from really having cracked it. Rather, we are grateful for any incremental improvements. And because given the scale of these processes, these savings, even with incremental increases, can be huge, and we have to be grateful for that. At the same time, we see a whole set of new providers, I think along the likes of AntWorks, Option 3, or Icarus, who provide a much broader cognitive capabilities to deal with exactly all these issues I could try to call out. And probably in the long run, we will see a much broader and expanded ecosystem. But second, and probably more pertinently to the impact of AI, how can disparate data sets be integrated into production for processes? That's for me one of the critical questions we have to answer. And it's pretty much a myth that you only have to throw machine learning or machine learning algorithm at it and it will take care of everything. To get there, organization needs learnable data, but this kind of data typically doesn't exist in the data warehouse. We have to be very clear about that. Rather, organizations need a blend of data engineers and data scientists, but both of those talent sets are rare and quite expensive, actually. Put another way of being in danger of shamelessly oversimplifying, for me and for us, the holy grail of AI is at the intersection of iterative data inputs and a minimal training of algorithms, because it's all about training algorithms, actually. Again, it's hardly anything's off the shelves. But to get there, one needs both technology and talent. And building on John's points regarding scaling, talent is probably the most critical issue, because this talent has to understand, on one hand, all those innovations we talked about, but crucially, the impact on process chain and workflows. And it's pretty much here where the rubber hits the road, or put another way, we have seen many projects failing. Not sure I've given you a half decent answer or just confuse the audience even more, but these are my 2 cents on AI.
Thanks, Tom. And I think we've also had some questions in around, can we use bots as a means of cleaning up data to drive machine learning as well? And I mean, Kashiv, do you have a perspective on that? I mean, as you look at clients getting more sophisticated, they're trying to integrate projects, do you see more of a role for RPA as we look up that spectrum?
Absolutely. I think going back to Tom's point, AI is not be all and all of everything. And we count Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Tesla, all of these as our customers. And they all are, world leading companies when it comes to AI, but they're using Automation Anywhere RPA. So it makes you wonder, why is that? And what we are realizing, and of course we're building cognitive capabilities, coming out with those at increasing pace. It has to be, at least from our perspective today, it has to be business-led. It has to be RPA-led AI. AI is, we all watch those IBM Watson ads, and it makes one wonder that where does the rubber really meet the road? So what we've seen is that Data cleansing is one of those things. Making OCR smarter is another of those things. But it's all about bringing AI into our automation of business processes that we do through RPA, that we do through other means. AI comes in. So, for example, Citrix automation is a very clear example where we have, with our latest version, we have launched Citrix automation with AI Sense, where we are bringing AI into the Citrix automation capabilities that allows us to do object linking, but go way beyond that, doing our data burst technology to pull all the data in rapid fashion and provide information that then RPA can take and automate as needed. So absolutely, data cleansing can be done, but I think we have to be careful as to when we start thinking about a general application of AI. We have to keep the focus of our industry front and center first.
Thank you, Kashif. Maybe I'll throw this one over to Sumit, as you've been through a lot of this in your own experience. But if you could start this journey over again, what would you do differently?
Interesting question, man. Interesting question. So a few things I will hold on to, and I will tell you what those are. So keep the delivery model very simple. I will definitely do that, and try something very fast. So fail fast is another two things which I will definitely do. What I will do differently though is try to have a far more stronger collaboration with IT. I think that's very important. So having a COE, there's always this big question that where does it fit? Does it fit in technology or does it fit in the business? So irrespectively, to have a strong collaboration with technology is very important to scale up in your automation journey. I believe that's one of the critical success factor. Second one is to make sure that we have a good sponsor, a strong sponsor available for the program in itself, who is basically willing to stand behind and not going with a small processes or small areas in the organization, but get one sponsor from one part of the bank and deliver a few good processes over there, so which can be taken as an example, which then will sell on itself. So these are the two major things which I will basically take care of. One is having a strong sponsor, and then second is to have a strong collaboration with technology.
Okay, and where have you seen RPA work most effectively as you look at the processes you've tried it out with and getting scale, that sort of thing? Where do you see, and maybe if you look over out in the next 6 months, do you see it being most impactful on the business?
So I think more in the finance side, in P2P area, in payments and operations area, and in HR space as well. I've seen that this is the and trade finance, some and trading area as well. So from banking perspective, these are the few areas where I see that there's a lot of volumes and a lot of different scenarios which can be basically used to automate. And also we touch upon various different applications at the same time. While processing a particular process. So these are the areas. And another thing which comes to my mind is the retail banking side, when you're basically trying to draw down the accounts. That's where the traditional fluctuation of the volume comes into picture. Right, during the holiday season, your home loan application goes off the roof. You need to hire more people and you need to let them go after a few months, right? So these are the areas which I believe could be a potential ideal candidates for automation.
Excellent, thanks, Sumit. I've got a question for Shada. As you know, you guys at EY have been pretty active in this space over the last couple of years in particular. As the clients, like we're hearing from Sumit, are getting more sophisticated, more experienced with this, what value do you see the advisory community bringing in intelligent automation in about another 6 to 12 months? Because clearly as demands change, needs change, where do you think advisors need to go in terms of really supporting clients in the future?
Yeah, so there's, I'd say, 3 things. One, despite the fact that clients have sort of started on their journey, this thing about scale is sort of on everyone's mind, right? Most clients that we've seen, most of them haven't reached a large number of bots. In fact, we happen to have internally a lot more bots than most of our clients. So that's one piece. So helping them scale and set the foundation. I think the other point that was made was this whole thing about looking beyond RPA while you're doing RPA becomes really important. So for that to happen is where we can help is as you're going through your sort of architecting and helping, put your RPA map together or what the bot needs to do, there has to be a very active and deliberate thought given to what are the pieces today that we haven't been able to tackle that we need to do machine learning with or other types of cognitive applications. Because not everyone, if you want to go with speed, you're not going to be able to do everything at the same time, but having that cognitive lens on that journey and being able to sort of relate the experiences. And I think three, I'll tell you, what we typically bring to the table is the been there, done that experience. There's nothing better than if you've gone through this for almost 3 years of sitting in production calls, seeing what can go wrong, seeing when you have stuff from UAT to production that fails and why it fails becomes very, very critical. One of the deep dives we always do, and the point about the data cleansing becomes really important, is every single exception that happens, right? We're looking at the root causes and saying, well, was it a tweak in the configuration that we need to make that doesn't have this, or was it just a basic user error? And really trying to understand that and sort of change that at the center, or was it a data issue? Because what this is highlighting for us a lot is where there are data issues, and you start spotlighting where there are data issues or where there are just IT application issues that keep failing. We had a situation where one day all our bots stopped, and the whole point, and what had happened is one of our main providers had put a patch in, and it was timing out, and all our bots, we hadn't configured our bots to deal with timeout issues, and it always used to happen a couple of times a month. Our people just accepted that as sort of the norm, went for a cup of coffee, did their thing, rebooted stuff a few times, and we're back again, right? But it was never as visible as it became with bots. So I think what this does for us is shines the light on a lot of the inefficiencies that we really start thinking about and figuring out how we solution. To me, this is huge because we never found out a lot about what was happening, deep dive in the processes, deep dive in technology, deep dive in user issues, that this is shining a light on, or even opportunities to do something better. So the process piece, improvement piece, has sort of been a huge bonus for us.
If I could add to that, this is so true. Two things that Shada has mentioned. One is the experience of having gone through the pains. But from a vendor perspective, I think it's important to learn from that and build in the tools that help you not run into those issues next time around. So Shada just mentioned what bot lifecycle management that we just introduced. The whole back-end scenario is that we've seen these issues in the past. Somebody introduced a new patch and things broke down. So you need a framework, a very formalized manner of bots going from dev to test to prod. And I think those tools are critical when you start scaling over above and beyond a certain level in an organization.
Great, thanks, Keshav. So I think we're sort of reaching the climax of today's session. So I'd like to go around the room with everybody giving one prediction for what we can expect to be talking about in exactly a year's time from now. So maybe John O'Brien at HfS, could you kick us off? One prediction for 1 year?
Right. Okay. So that's a tricky one. So I'm gazing into my crystal ball. I think what I would say is I think we're going to see more breakthrough RPA-led deals. We've seen some already in Japan. Some of the big banking clients in Japan are really going for it in terms of the scale and the number of bots that they're using to build out transformation programs. I think that's going to move to Europe. I think we're going to see some in Europe. And the US, and I think I would say and we'll see a lot more of those that leading RPA and broader AI tools together as part of an ecosystem approach to transform operations.
John, thank you. Sumit Pathak?
Yes, I think for me, it will be in a year's time, we'll see the boundaries will start to disappear between RPA and machine learning. The business will look for a solution to their problem, and it will be up to us on how do we respond to that in holistic way using various levers. Could be RPA, could be ML, or could be just efficiency drive in itself. So that's how I see they will come and say, we have a problem, can you resolve it? And it's up to you how you do it by using RP and other technologies.
Thanks, Amit. Tom Reuner, HfS.
I think we will see next year major litigation lawsuits getting the headlines, even on the broadsheet papers, because I think one piece I'm picking up time and time, not least, just doing the interviews on enterprise AI governance just doesn't come up in those discussions. And it's quite scary because the more we scale, the more we advance toward notion of end-to-end processes or even straight processing. Until we security, governance, probably even testing is not just an afterthought or reactive when things go wrong. I think we will see probably one major lawsuit hitting the headlines, and only then people will start taking things much more seriously.
Thanks, Tom. That was very cheery.
You know me.
Exactly, good. And Kashif, one prediction for 1 year.
I'll actually completely agree with Tom, and I think organizations, vendors specifically, have to build in checks and balances. Governance is going to be critical going forward, especially above a certain level of size of a company and scaling. So going forward, you will see more and more in terms of investment that specifically we are making in control room and governance, and how security permeates through the organization, and how it's controlled and monitored.
And thank you, Kashif. And last but certainly not least, the word from our partner from Ernst & Young, Shada Cheru. 1 year, one prediction.
Sure. I think it is going to be the year of the bot, but bots are going to proliferate a lot more than we've ever seen them before. I think we're going to have probably 10 times the number of bots in the world today than we have today in a year. We're seeing clients really take this seriously and scale up. So just the number of bots, and we ourselves, we have 260,000 people around the world, and our aspiration is to get to 30% of our population basically be a digital workforce. So in a short time.
Excellent, thank you. So we're going to have a recording available. If you go to our website in the next couple of days, hfsresearch.com, there'll be a recording available and hopefully some slides to download from today's production. And I'd like to thank everybody for a fantastic conversation. We really did talk about the whole spectrum of insights around RPA and AI today. So Sumit Pathak from Societe Generale, Kashif Mahboob, Automation Anywhere, Shada Cheru from Ernst & Young, and my colleagues John O'Brien and Tom Reuner from HfS Research. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hopefully catching up with you maybe in a year's time. We can talk about it again. So thank you, everybody, and thanks all of you for dialing in and listening to us and sending in so many questions. We'll try and get back to you as many as we can offline. So have a great rest of day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.